the architect is doing construction cost estimate, they're using an assemblies type cost estimate. What stage of the project, is the project at? Sort of oddly worded, sorry. What would you guess that what's going on here? Is it the end of SD? Is it the end of DD? Is it during programming? Or should the architect never do a cost estimate? Well, as much fun as it would be to say that the architect should never do a cost estimate, that is definitely not the case. Again, always worry about words like never and always and things like that. It's just not a smart way to go most of the time. There are occasionally when those words work, but not usually. So the question really is, what kind of cost estimate are you doing at each of these different phases? So maybe at programming, you might be doing something like, let's see, okay, we're doing a junior high school, and this junior high school is going to be for 400 kids. And we did one 2 years ago that was for 500 kids. So we can kind of take a percentage of the cost that it took to do and the fees that it took to do that one and kind of how much things cost to build. We can kind of adjust it off of that previous experience. Or maybe we might be using a kind of general square footage number, something like that, like it's going to be $250 a square foot or something along those lines. So programming phase, I'm not going to be using an assemblies type. I'm going to be using a comparative or some sort of very simple square footage idea. When I get to the end of schematic design, that schematic design, I will, as an architect, I am actually typically required, not always, depends on how the contract reads, but built into the contract is the expectation that the architect will provide something of a cost estimate at the end of SD, at the end of DD, and then do they do it at the end of CDs? No, because that's why you have bid. The bid is the cost estimate. So you are doing cost estimates all the way along, and you're hoping that those cost estimates are matching up nicely with what the bid to come is going to be. So if that programming one was very sort of loose and just kind of a rough comparison to another previous project, well then the SD one, now you've done a little bit of design work. Maybe you can say, all right, the basements we can count at $100 a square foot, but the main spaces are going to be at $250 a square foot, and then the carports and something else will be at $40 a square foot. Like you're getting a little more specific and you're aiming in a little bit. And so it should be slightly more accurate than your first example. Well then, by the time you get to the end of DD, design development, you should actually know what all the walls are. You should know how the structural system is going to work. You don't necessarily know all the details yet, but you know the gist of all those assemblies. Note that I use the word assemblies. And so when you are doing a cost estimate at the end of design development, you're going to be using numbers like $12 per linear foot for a one Wythe brick wall, and then maybe we're adding another $5 for the backup per linear foot, et cetera, et cetera. So what that's building in, that brick wall, it's building in all of the stuff that you would put with that brick, the tiebacks, the flashing, the insulation in the air gap, all of those things would get put into that assembly. And then you could just look at it as a linear number. So is this as good as doing a full-on, like counting every brick and doing it? No, of course not. It's not going to be as detailed as what a contractor would do when they're doing full bid, but it's much more accurate than just using a square footage number, and you're really getting close. So you'd have all the wall assemblies, all the floor assemblies, all the roof assemblies. You'd have a sort of it's not really an assembly, but you'd have an idea for the concept for the mechanical. You'd have an idea for the electrical system, kind of based off of square footage. So it's a way of building up. You're still using these sort of rounded numbers that you're looking up online or in a book, or finding some information from somewhere. You're getting a whole series of different pieces of information, but this is still probably only 30 pieces of information. A full bid is hundreds of pieces of information. So when you're talking about the assemblies type, That's when you have an assembly. So it's everything for that assembly. So let's say it's a floor assembly. I've got the wood floor, I've got the subfloor, I've got the 2x12s, I've got the drywall on the bottom side, and I've got some sound attenuation material in between. All of that stuff would be understood as a per square foot. So I don't have to start adding in all those different elements. I just have one number for that full assembly. So I just have to count up all the assemblies and then figure out which ones are linear foot, which ones are square foot, which ones don't occupy in that way, like a mechanical uses a different system than that. But I would figure out all those square feet, all those linear feet, and then I just add up those numbers, and that's going to get me a very close estimate. So that's about as close as architects ever get. If you're going to get more than that, typically you're going to bring in a contractor or some other estimator who's going to do the full-on estimate.
For those of you who are ready to start preparing for the ARE right now, and if you're already an AIA member, you can use coupon code 41817PJMYT to get a 15% discount for the entire duration of your ARE exam prep membership. Finally, please leave a comment below the video to let us know what you think and share any suggestions you may have. I promise we'll read every word that you write and use them to tune our next episodes. So thanks for watching.